right, today we are going to talk about cells. Cells, everything in life consists in a level of organization, with the cell being the smallest unit of life. When we group similar cells together, then they will make up a tissue, say a muscle tissue or a skin tissue. We group similar tissues together and they make up an organ, and similar organs together, several organs make up an organ system. So levels of organization are cell, tissue, organ, and organ system. Here's a visual to help you understand that a little better. Here we have a muscle cell, one singular cell. We group a bunch of those cells together and we have smooth muscle tissue. And that tissue then makes up the stomach, which is an organ. And we put the stomach in with other organs, and we end up with an entire organ system. In this case, it would be the digestive system. Okay, some things that you need to know. Some good words. First of all, uni. The prefix uni means, what do you think? One. Very good. Yes, uni means one. So a unicellular organism consists of only one cell. And we typically see that in bacteria. Multi, the prefix multi means many. And so multicellular, it consists of many cells. Trees, dogs, grass, anything like that consists of many cells. And then you have subcellular, sub meaning below. So this means it lacks the organization of a cell. So it doesn't even have that. All right, let's classify them. Two ways to classify them. You can have eukaryotic or you can have prokaryotic. With your eukaryotic cell, they have what's called a true nucleus. This just means it is enclosed in a membrane. And so the genetic material is wrapped in a membrane, and so it's considered a true nucleus, versus a prokaryote that lacks that true nucleus. Now, it still has DNA, it still has genetic material in there, but it's not wrapped within a membrane, and so does not have a true nucleus. The other thing with eukaryotes is they have these membrane-bound organelles. So when you hear Golgi body, lysosome, all of those sorts of things, those are the organelles of the cell. And you will find the organelles only in the eukaryotes. You don't find them in the prokaryotes. All right, and then here's a little picture there for you. Both the prokaryote and the eukaryote, they both have a cell membrane, and you can see here, both these have a cell membrane. Both of them have cytoplasm. They have that jelly-like material inside the cell that holds the things in place, and the eukaryote has this nucleus here in the center. Again, look at that membrane bound that holds the genetic material inside. And like I said, the eukaryotes have the organelles here inside of the cell. Here inside of the prokaryote, you just have the genetic material, and the genetic material here for the eukaryote is enclosed in the nucleus. Okay, little history of the cell. We'll start with Robert Hooke. Well, Robert Hooke used a compound microscope and he looked at a slice of cork, a piece of plant material, and he called these things cells because they were square, and you can see how they look. Whoops, let me go back to that. There we go. So you can see here these little squares. Well, we know now that plant cells have a square shape to them, and so he called them cells. Anton van Leeuwenhoek, I always love to say that. Anton van Leeuwenhoek observed cells in pond water. And he said cells are everywhere. I mean, when he started looking, he saw them everywhere. And Leeuwenhoek is credited with developing the first microscope. Moving on to Schleiden and Schwann. Their discovery showed that all plants and animals are made up of cells, and Virchow then all cells come from pre-existing cells. These scientists collaboratively, their information all led to what we now call, whoops, not protists, but what we call the cell theory. And our cell theory comes in three parts. The first one being that all living things are composed of cells. Anything that's alive is composed of cells. We also say with the cell theory that cells are the basic unit of structure and function in living things. And those new cells are produced from pre-existing cells. They don't just randomly happen. Okay, something to know that all cells have, just like we looked at that picture, the prokaryotes and the eukaryotes, both of those cells. So all cells have this cell membrane, and we're going to look at the cell membrane in a little more detail coming up. But that is the outer covering that separates the outside from the inside. It has a very, very specific job with transportation. And DNA, the other thing that all cells have is they all have DNA. They all have genetic material, whether it's a prokaryote or a eukaryote. Okay, let's look at some of these organelles. We'll start in on this. Starting in, here is the nucleus. We call this the brain of the cell. This controls the activities of the cell. And this nuclear membrane, so here, this whole purple thing right here is the nucleus. And on the outside out here is the nuclear membrane. It controls movement in and out of the nucleus, much like the cell membrane controls what goes in and out of the cell. You can see these little pores on here. And then inside of here, you can see inside of the nucleus is the nucleolus. Now, just like we have cytoplasm within the cell, we have nucleoplasm within the nucleus. And that's the supporting substance. So, the chromatin is the genetic material that's inside the nucleus. It's made up of DNA and protein. And if we were looking to kind of put a name to what it looks like, it kind of looks like spaghetti all over the place. No real organization there. Now, very important though, because during the process of cell division, and we're going to hit that later on, but during that process of cell division, it's the chromatin that becomes the chromosomes. And as I stated before, that nucleolus inside the nucleus is the little nucleus, very important role, produces the RNA, and this is where the assembly of ribosomes begin. These centrioles here, these are centrioles right here. They will produce the spindle fibers during cell division. So when we go through cell division and we look at these spindle fibers forming that will then attach to the chromosomes, this is where they're being made at, in the centrioles. And you can see these long tubes here. It looks like something that it would be able to produce strings of something. Now the centrioles, another important part, is they're not found in plant cells. All right, a little bit about the cell membrane. The cell membrane controls the movement of material in and out of the cell. We call it selectively permeable because it lets some things in, but not all things in. It lets some things out, but not all things out. It's made up of lipids and proteins, and here is the structure down here. You have these phosphate groups and these lipids, these fat right in here, hanging down these fatty tails here. Two layers, it's called a lipid bilayer because there's two layers. So you have this phosphate group lipid and then the phosphate group lipid. The phosphate group likes water, lipids not so much. So they will orient themselves on the inside because there's the water on the outside and on the inside. All right. We're going to look at the rest of the cell membrane in detail in our next video.